Hi, hello, and welcome, or welcome back, I suppose. Today we are coming to the end of this little six-ish of the best series, and I will be doing a little wrap-up of that at the end of the video. As you can tell, we also are doing a little voiceover today. So, our final book is The Familiars by Stacey Halls. This one was picked out for me because it's centered around local history. Gawthorpe Hall, which is where the main character lives. That really isn't a place that's all that far from me, and Pendle Hill is visible in most places around me. And the Pendle Witch Trials is a part of history that is generally just known about, at the very least, in my local area. When I was in late primary school, early secondary school, I did become a little bit obsessed with it, but later undiagnosed ADHD and being a bit of a weird kid in general will do that to you. But to some extent, people in the local area know about the witch trials. Let's delve into an albeit fantastical and fictional version of local history. Now, I want to start by saying I'll be completely honest, and I never finished Jessie Burton's The Miniaturist. I only got about halfway or 2/3 of the way through. I was enjoying it, but at some point I just stopped. Y'all have no idea how much doing reviews has got me to finish books. But anyway, the reason I bring that book up is that this book's style was really reminiscent of it. I don't have to have finished The Miniaturist to see that the style itself is really similar. So if you liked that book or anything else by Jessie Burton, then I think you will really like this. A lot of what makes this book really interesting is the low-key exploration of witchcraft and magic. So from what I've gathered with having witchy friends and watching bits and pieces online, magic, when practiced by sort of, witches and the like, is a lot less Harry Potter, say a thing happens. It's more kind of reading into signs. Look at something like tarot. Tarot isn't going to actually tell you your future precisely. You and the person doing your readings have to interpret what the cards are telling you. In The Familiars, gross. In The Familiars, it's perhaps not surprising that animals are the reoccurring signs, given that familiars are the witch's creatures. Alice, who is a witch... Alice, who is the only witch from the Pendle Witch Trials who wasn't convicted, is one of the central characters within this story, and she is linked to foxes throughout the book, and that's even when they're not present at the same time. I'd say think of it a bit like how with some people, when a person passes away, they have items or something like that they see that it's a sign from the person that's passed. Some people have a feather falls from a certain kind of bird and they're like, oh, that's a sign from one of their deceased loved ones. And whether magic is actually real doesn't really matter. It's belief that gives it power. For Fleetwood, who is the lady of Gawthorpe Hall, there is hope and safety when she sees those foxes. There's power in that because she believes in it. And hell, the belief that witches hold magic power is a huge reason for the fear. Without believing that they have that power, there is no idea of magic. Now, the tinctures and medicines, that's not magic. That's just natural medicine. It's the framing of that makes it magic. And that framing being sexism and also issues to do with the king being a Protestant and a lot of people up north at the time being Catholic and issues surrounding that. And there's also this young girl who, her family, who are, well, all the women in her family at the very least, are all being put on trial during the witch trials. And she tells stories about this family, and it's hard to know what's real, what she believes, or what she's been told to say to make sure that her family is convicted, because she's been put up in this really nice home, mostly because she's useful. She's really pliable in being able to make her say things. And there's something really haunting about her and the ambiguity that surrounds her. And it's just Hall's exploration of magic is truly fascinating because it feels so grounded in reality. I wasn't sure how much actual magic was going to take place, whether it would be just focusing on the medicines side of it, if there would be any ambiguity with magic, and the way it's explored here is really, really fascinating. There are other things that I really enjoyed about it. You can see that, like, idea of, whenever you read historical fiction, there's stuff that's like, God, I'm glad I'm not living in the past. Where you've got Fleetwood, who, when she was a tiny child, was offered to be married to this guy once she was old enough, which is just grade A grim. She's 4 when she's offered up, and it's sort of like, well, either when she's old enough. I was about to say when she's an adult, but I believe she's like 14 when she ends up with the guy who she's married to throughout the rest of the book. And I'm really glad that it's brought up that, like, that's still young. So there's a servant that ends up getting dismissed because he called her a child bride. So it's clear that 14 is still incredibly young. It's either 13 or 14, I couldn't quite work that out, that was a little bit unclear, but I really like that that's brought up, because so often people are like, oh yeah, 14 is a normal age to get married in the past. It's like, no. It was usually, I believe, about 16, 15 or 16, which is still young, but that was also about 15 or 16 for women being married to other people who were about the same age, the sort of young suitors being married to make sure family names get made good and all that. Now, I will say, I have one tiny issue with this that really doesn't make any difference to how I feel about the rest of the book, but at the end, there are, or at least towards the end, there are some things that do feel like they're being tied up in a bow a little bit too nicely, but it's something that can be easily looked over because the rest of the book is just so fantastic. It's not something that you're like really into it and then you see that thing at the last minute and you're like, oh, wish you hadn't done that. But no, this book blew my mind. I'm so glad I got to end this mini-series with an absolute banger. This is up there as one of my absolute favourites of the year so far. It's also the perfect, like, autumnal, cozy read, and, you know, with the content of witches and all that, it is the perfect little, like, especially it being Halloween coming up, I just think it works really well. This is certainly something to get your hands on at this time of year. It wasn't on purpose that I put this out during this and The Wolf and the Woodsman. It wasn't on purpose that I put this out on that first week of October kind of deal, but it worked out quite well. This is also a really easy read as well. I was able to quite happily read it within a couple of days, which if I'm reading a book in a day or two, it's not generally an enjoyable task. It's something that even if it's something that I have to do. Now, I'll be totally honest, I was supposed to read it in a lot longer space of time, but it's me, I've got my time messed up, because that's usually the way I am. But reading it within a day or two didn't feel like a task. In fact, I was so happy to just spend this whole day reading this book, and I enjoyed every second of it. So let's do our quick time wrap up of our little 6-ish of the best series. First, we had People from My Neighborhood by Hiromi Kawakami. Phenomenal little bite-sized stories that are weird and wonderful. Then we had Callacane by Karen Boyer, which was a haunting piece of dystopian fiction that could frighteningly still be published today. Next was Untold Night and Day by Bae Suah. That was so odd and confusing, but delectably so. Virgin Suicides by Jeffrey Eugenides was after that, and it's a story that's so enjoyably frustrating as we see a narrator who cannot be trusted at any turn. We then had The Devil's Advocate by Steve Cavanagh, which was a really interesting look at the politics of the death penalty and also race relations in the Deep South. Now, this past Tuesday, we had The Wolf and the Woodsman by Ava Reed. It's a book that had potential, but missed the mark a little bit for me. And, of course, you've just seen my review of The Familiars by Stacey Halls, so I don't think we need to go back into that. Overall, I really couldn't have... Overall, I couldn't have really had that much of a better bunch of books. There was one out of the 6 that wasn't great, but it wasn't a bad book at all. And I think it'll be a good while until I do this again, but I always love doing this because it's a great little... get a surprise, get a whole new bunch of books, and with it being from the library, I can do it for free. Also, support your local libraries. From now until the end of October, we will only be doing one book a week. I have a big project coming up relatively soon. I will explain that at the end of October, but I need to be able to take some time to read stuff for that, and that's not being published as I read them in the way that I'm doing with this. So, one book a week from now on, well, until the end of October. Now, as I have been asking, I would appreciate it if you could help me get to my little goal of getting to 50 subscribers by the end of the year. And probably the easiest way to do that is to do all the classic little YouTuber-y things. So, liking, commenting, subscribing, putting the notification bell on, and also retweeting my video tweets, which will be found in the description below. So, I hope you have a wonderful day, a wonderful night, a wonderful whenever you are watching this. Take care of yourselves. Right.